that this piece of legislation will empower. Kia ora.
I call Gareth Hughes.
Mr Speaker, before I seek the call, I'd like to seek leave for the vote on Part 3 to be taken separately.
Leave is sought that the question on Part 3 will be taken as a separate vote. The Green Party is seeking leave to do that. Is there any objection to that course of action? There is no objection. That will happen when we come to the vote. Gareth Hughes.
Mr Speaker, Mr Chair, thank you very much. I'd like to rise to support Parts 1, 2 and 4 of this bill, but note the Green Party's opposition to Part 3, which I'm glad the House can take a separate vote on. This legislation is called the Energy Innovation, Electric Vehicles and Other Matters Amendment Bill. Now, the other matters are pretty uncontroversial. We support the idea that EECA should be able to access other energy-related levies. It was perhaps not the best way to structure it that only specifically looked at electricity levies. It makes sense to wrap it all in one organisation so we have a true leadership position in the New Zealand economy working with businesses no matter what the energy is. Obviously, if you're looking at electrons or kilowatt hours of electricity, you don't discern where it comes from, gas, renewables, etc. It makes sense. Equally so when it comes to the gas levy and when it comes to the secondary networks definition, which is contained in those parts 1, 2 and 4. Now, it's the electric vehicles part that the Green Party does have considerable opposition. We heard from numerous submitters in the Select Committee concerns that encouraging or allowing electric vehicles in bus lanes could be both detrimental to bus lanes but also wider public transport outcomes. Now, to summarise, basically, many of our bus lanes are full up with buses, and if you put electric vehicles in as well, particularly as buses pull in and pull out as they drop off passengers, the risk is if you add more vehicles to it, you're simply going to clog up the bus lane and it's going to be less effective at doing the primary purpose, which is moving a large number of passengers on the buses around our towns and cities. Now, the big debate we also heard in the Select Committee was around the enforcement of the bus lanes. Now, this was quite a wide debate we heard, and we canvassed some evidence internationally on how you can signal whether a car is in fact an electric vehicle or not. Other countries have different coloured licence plates, different stickers, other forms of identification. The concern we had is that there would be a bit of a dilemma facing councils, that they would want to minimise non-electric vehicles using bus lanes if they, through a bylaw, made the bus lane available to electric vehicles. Now, it's twofold, because we don't want to see those massive congestion issues, but secondly, we also don't want people free riding and without an electric vehicle taking advantage of what I guess you could consider a perk or advantage. Now, the problem is that people could get quite upset if they saw the other vehicles in front of them, they knew it was an electric vehicle or couldn't easily identify it was an electric vehicle, and you could get road rage. I gave the personal example. I live quite close to a very high traffic bus lane in Wellington, and the council often has cameras erected out front to try and photograph those cars taking advantage or abusing the bus lane. But what we heard from the officials is it's going to be at the council expense. Now, if you go to any local government event anywhere up and down the country, a key message you hear is that this Parliament gives new obligations, new costs to local government without the ability to actually raise extra revenues. I think it is quite a legitimate concern they have, and here we are yet again bringing in another obligation. There isn't an easy way to stop that free riding or that dilemma if you don't have those identifications. So that's why we've got a concern. If you were going to be promoting electric vehicles, which is ostensibly the objective of the Energy Innovation Bill, there's a range of other measures you would look at. Now, what we heard in the Select Committee, putting electric vehicles in bus lanes might have a marginal difference, but it's very much on the margins. It isn't the most effective thing you could do if you truly wanted to drive a step change in adoption of electric vehicles. It's been fantastic in New Zealand to see the growth from about 700, maybe 3, 4, 5 years to more than 3,000 as we heard recently. That's fantastic, but that's a drop in the bucket of the, I believe, around 70,000 new vehicle imports we have on some months, record numbers of vehicle imports, and a drop in the bucket when you look at what other developed nations are seeing with the growth of electric vehicles. I was in California recently where the state doesn't just offer access to high occupancy vehicle lanes. Now remember, these are very different to bus lanes, which often only go for a small amount of time, except for the Northwell bus lane. In California, these are 2 dedicated lanes for multiple passenger vehicles. Now there, you also get $10,000 state credit, $5,000 federal tax credit, huge amounts of cash investment, not just access to high occupancy vehicle lanes, and they've got about 3 to 5%, if my memory serves me correctly. In the Netherlands, I understand it's 3%, the Minister informs. In the Netherlands, we see a penetration of around 17%. In fact, Germany and the Netherlands parliaments are having debates whether, Mr Chair.
Gareth Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Whether in fact petrol and combustion-driven engines should be prohibited in the coming decades, which is phenomenal. So other countries have put in much more significant promotion measures, but also more significant sticks, for want of a better word, in terms of forward planning and signalling an end to legal sales of combustion motors, but also much more higher petrol and fuel excise taxes and other forms of fee-bait measures. So when you look around the world, there's a whole bunch of other initiatives, from infrastructure electric charging to tax credits to sticks as well. In New Zealand, we limit it basically to elimination from the road user charge, and possibly, if councils enact it through a bylaw, access to vehicle bus lanes. Now, my fear is that because we're loading it all onto councils, they're going to face pressure from electric vehicle owners to open up the bus lanes, and then the council's also going to be required to pay for all the enforcement costs. We heard in the committee we can be talking in the order of tens of thousands of dollars when you look at the camera technology, the staff costs from literally in 2017, the 21st century, people sitting on the side of the road looking at the vehicles and watching. You're going to have to take photographs to scan the licence plate number through the national database, because there is no sticker, there is no coloured licence plate, there's no easy identifier. So it's going to be quite difficult. Now, the Green Party absolutely supports the intent of promoting electric vehicles. We've launched a number of policies over a number of years, from investing in modern state-high infrastructure, rolling out a network of fast charging stations, from fringe benefit tax changes, which is going to drive that corporate procurement, which is going to drive that second-hand car market. Probably the most effective thing this Parliament could be doing if it wanted to truly drive a step change, through to cash rebate of $1,000, etc. So while we're talking about energy innovation, we should be talking about the true innovative steps we could be making, not this. And that's why we're voting against Part 3. When you look at the other parts, the gas levies, the energy fuel levies and references Act amendment changes, and the secondary networks definition, this isn't innovative. We heard that again in the committee. There are other steps this Parliament could be taking to adopt that. We're at a time of huge disruption and change when you look at the global energy industry. Recently, I was fortunate enough to meet with an official from New York, where they're re-envisioning Energy Vision, the REV strategy, which they're rolling out in that state, is truly bringing transformative change to their energy sector. By prioritising energy efficiency and conservation, smart technologies, they're actively reducing greenhouse gas emissions. At a time, I'll give you Seattle as another example where I've met with officials, at a time when they're the fastest growing city in the US, they've in fact seen an energy consumption decline of around 13% because their state and federal policies have driven their utilities to invest in energy efficiency and conservation measures. When I recently launched a paper, how getting to 100% renewables could look, from some consultants from the Rocky Mountain Institute, what they found is that energy efficiency measures cost in the order of 0.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Compare that, a negawatt, using less electricity, with 8 or more cents per kilowatt hour for new generation, and that's very cheap comparatively international for new hydro, new wind generation, an order of magnitude cheaper for new efficiency and conservation. These are the measures we should be debating instead of just the definition of secondary networks as they relate to, say, an apartment building. We should be having the conversation, how can we get solar panels on apartments? How can we get that apartment car park using electric vehicles to feed and discharge into the local electricity grid? And to access cheap hydroelectricity, which is often flowing at night at close to negative prices, or charging during the day from solar panels on top of the apartment or a nearby business. If we could do that, if we could harness a distributed battery network through a network of literally hundreds of thousands of electric vehicles. We could be saving consumers money with the peak electricity cost, which drives the average wholesale cost, which flows through to consumers. We could be reducing the need for coal and oil to be burnt at peak time. It's a fantastic opportunity for New Zealand. So look, we welcome parts 1, 2 and 4 of this legislation, but we will be voting against part 4 because we fear it's going to damage public transport in New Zealand. And if we looked across the range of initiatives this Parliament could be debating to truly encourage electric vehicles, this isn't the place you'd look.
I call Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair.